Every morning for the past 3 years, I'd wake up to the same word. Useless. That's what she called me while I fixed her coffee exactly how she liked it. Useless when I replaced the burnt-out light bulb she'd been complaining about for weeks. Useless when I quietly handled the bills, the maintenance calls, the insurance paperwork that kept our household running smoothly. You'd think after 12 years of marriage, a man would get used to being called incompetent by his own wife. But here's the thing about constant criticism. It doesn't make you numb. It makes you calculating. And I've been calculating for quite some time. She had this routine down to a science. Wake up, find something I'd done wrong, announce my inadequacy to anyone within earshot. Last Tuesday, it was because I'd loaded the dishwasher incorrectly. Apparently, plates face the wrong direction when a useless man handles them. Thursday, I was useless because I'd forgotten to buy her specific brand of yogurt, even though she'd never actually asked me to buy it. But the breaking point came last Saturday night. We were having dinner with her parents, people I'd always respected and treated well. I'd spent the entire afternoon preparing the house, cooking her favorite meal, making sure everything was perfect. Her father was telling a story about fixing his own garage door, and her mother complimented the dinner I'd made. That's when she decided to perform her favorite show. "Oh, don't praise him too much," she said with that laugh that made my jaw clench. "He's pretty useless around the house most of the time. I have to do everything myself. You should see how he tries to fix things. It's honestly embarrassing." Her parents looked uncomfortable. Her father actually frowned. She wasn't done. Just yesterday, he couldn't even figure out how to reset the Wi-Fi router. I had to call my brother to walk him through it like he's some kind of child. The room went quiet. I set down my fork very carefully and looked directly at her. For 12 years, I'd been the man who quietly handled every technical issue, every repair, every complicated task that kept our life running. I'd reset that router myself after troubleshooting a connection problem she'd created by unplugging it incorrectly. But instead of defending myself, I did something that surprised everyone at that table, including myself. I smiled. Not a bitter smile or an angry one. A genuinely amused smile. "You know what?" I said, cutting into my steak with deliberate precision. "You're absolutely right. I am pretty useless." She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. Her parents shifted uncomfortably. But I continued eating, letting that statement hang in the air like a challenge. After her parents left that night, she tried to backtrack. "I was just joking around," he said, but we both knew better. This wasn't joking. This was a pattern of public humiliation that had gone on far too long. I didn't argue with her. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded and said, "I know exactly what you think of me. And you know what? I think it's time I started living up to your expectations." She laughed nervously. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked at her for a long moment, then headed upstairs. "It means," I called back, "that useless men shouldn't be expected to be useful." Makes perfect sense when you think about it. That night, lying in bed while she scrolled through her phone beside me, I made a decision that would change everything. If she wanted to see what useless really looked like, I was more than happy to show her. After all, why should a useless man burden himself with responsibilities that clearly meant nothing to his wife? The interesting thing about being called useless for years is that people forget to notice all the things you actually do. They take for granted the silent efficiency, the problems solved before they become problems, the smooth operation of daily life that happens because someone competent is handling it. But what happens when that competent person decides to embrace the label they've been given? What happens when useless stops being an insult and starts being a job description? She was about to find out. And honestly, I was looking forward to the lesson almost as much as I'd looked forward to our wedding day. Because sometimes, the best way to show someone your worth is to show them exactly what life looks like without it. Monday morning arrived with the usual routine. She woke up, padded to the kitchen, and found her coffee maker sitting cold and empty. For 12 years, I'd been setting it up the night before, ensuring her precious morning caffeine was ready when she stumbled downstairs. "Not today." "Hey," she called from the kitchen. "The coffee isn't ready." I was in the living room, reading the news on my tablet. I responded without looking up. "That's weird. Can you make it?" I set down the tablet and walked to the kitchen, examining the coffee maker like I was seeing it for the first time. "I don't know," I said thoughtfully. "Remember what you told your parents? I'm pretty useless with household stuff. Wouldn't want to mess it up." She stared at me for a moment, clearly trying to figure out if I was serious. "Just make the coffee. But what if I do it wrong? You know how useless I am." I shrugged and walked back to the living room. Better safe than sorry. That was day one of my new approach to life. Every task she'd previously taken for granted became an opportunity for me to embrace my newfound uselessness. By Wednesday, the subtle changes were adding up. The garbage disposal started making that grinding noise it makes when something's stuck, something I'd always fixed immediately. This time, I just turned it off and left it. The disposal is acting up, she mentioned during dinner. Oh no, I said, taking another bite. Sounds like a job for someone who knows what they're doing. Good thing you don't rely on useless people for that kind of thing. She gave me a look that could melt steel, but I just smiled and asked if she could pass the salt. Thursday brought a new opportunity when our bedroom ceiling fan started wobbling. For years, I tightened the screws, balanced the blades, kept it running smoothly. Now I lay in bed, watching it wobble ominously above us. That fan is going to fall on our heads, she said. Probably should get someone competent to fix it. I agreed. Wouldn't want a useless person making it worse. Are you going to fix it or not? I turned to face her with genuine confusion. Why would you ask someone useless to fix something important? That doesn't make sense. What if I make it dangerous? You always say I don't know what I'm doing. Friday was when the real fun began. Our internet started acting up, not because of any real problem, but because I'd quietly changed the router settings to limit bandwidth during her peak usage hours. She spent an hour on the phone with customer service, getting increasingly frustrated. They say everything looks fine on their end, she announced, hanging up with barely contained rage. Technology can be tricky, I said sympathetically. Remember how you had to call your brother to help me with the router? Maybe he can figure this out too. Just look at it. I walked over to the router, examined it briefly, then shook my head. Nope. Looks like router stuff to me, and we both know how that went last time. Don't want to embarrass myself again. The weekend brought my favorite moment yet. She was getting ready for her book club meeting when she realized her car registration had expired. She'd gotten the renewal notice weeks ago, a notice I'd always handled immediately. My registration expired, she said, waving the notice. Can't drive with expired tags. That's unfortunate, I said, not looking up from my magazine. Well, can you go renew it? I laughed genuinely. Me? Handle important paperwork? Remember what you said about how I tried to handle the insurance stuff last year? You said I'd probably mess it up and cost us money. I never said that. I raised an eyebrow. You said I was useless with paperwork and that you'd handle important documents yourself from now on. Those were your exact words. She stood there for a moment, clearly remembering the conversation differently than she'd expected. Fine, I'll do it myself. Great idea. Much safer that way. What she didn't realize was that the DMV was only open until noon on Saturdays, and it was already 11:30. By the time she got there, dealt with parking, and waited in line, they'd be closed. Her book club started at 2. Sure enough, she came home frustrated and empty-handed at 1:15. They were closed, she announced. On a Saturday? That seems inefficient. I was genuinely sympathetic. When can you go back? Monday. But I need my car this weekend. That is a problem, I agreed. Good thing you're handling it yourself, though. I probably would have checked their hours first, but that's just me overthinking things like I always do. The look she gave me could have powered our house for a week. But here's what she was starting to understand. When you label someone as incompetent long enough, you can't suddenly expect competence when it's convenient for you. Sunday evening, she was dealing with a clogged bathroom sink, something that usually took me about 5 minutes to clear. I could hear her struggling with the plunger, muttering increasingly creative profanity. Need help? I called from the living room. Yes. I don't know, I said, appearing in the doorway. Plumbing seems pretty technical. What if I make it worse? You know how useless I am with this stuff. She turned to face me, her face flushed with effort and frustration. Just, please. I considered this for a moment. Tell you what, since you're asking so nicely, I'll give it a try. But don't blame me when I mess it up. I fixed the sink in about 2 minutes. A simple hair clog that required nothing more than removing the drain stopper. She watched the whole thing with a mixture of relief and growing realization. See, I said, washing my hands. Lucky guess. Even useless people get lucky sometimes. That night, as we got ready for bed, I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was starting to connect dots that had never occurred to her before. All those little conveniences she'd taken for granted weren't happening by magic. But we were just getting started. If she thought week 1 was educational, week 2 was going to be a masterclass. Week 2 started with a bang. Literally. The washing machine decided to throw its spin cycle tantrum on Monday morning. shaking like it was trying to break free from the laundry room floor. The sound echoed through the house like a freight train having a seizure. She came running downstairs in her robe, panic written across her face. "What is that noise?" I was calmly eating breakfast, seemingly unbothered by the mechanical earthquake happening 20 feet away. "Sounds like the washing machine," I said between bites of cereal. "Well, do something." I looked at her with that same confused expression I'd been perfecting. "Like what? I'm useless with appliances, remember? You've mentioned it several times. What if I break it completely?" The machine gave one final violent shake and went silent. She stared at me, then at the laundry room, then back at me. "I have a presentation today. I need that load finished." "Tough situation," I agreed. "Maybe call a repair guy? Though that might be expensive." Good thing you don't rely on incompetent people to handle these emergencies. What she didn't know was that I'd simply unbalanced the load on purpose. 15 seconds of rearranging the clothes would have fixed it completely. But why would a useless person know something like that? Tuesday brought its own entertainment. The garbage disposal, still grinding unhappily since the previous week, finally gave up entirely. She was preparing dinner when it just stopped responding altogether. "The disposal is completely dead now," she announced, frustration clear in her voice. "Bummer," I said, not looking up from my book. "Those things can be complicated. Probably need an electrician or a plumber. Or both. Hard to tell with mechanical stuff. Can't you at least look at it?" I walked over and flipped the switch a few times, listening to the complete silence with exaggerated concern. "Yep, definitely broken. Could be electrical, could be mechanical, could be both. This is exactly the kind of thing I'd make worse by touching it." She spent 40 minutes on the phone trying to find someone who could come out the same day. 3 different companies, 3 different appointment windows ranging from "sometime next week" to "we can fit you in Thursday between 8 and 5. $200 just for them to look at it," she muttered after hanging up. "Seems steep," I agreed. "But that's what happens when you need real professionals instead of amateur hour." What I didn't mention was that the disposal had simply tripped its reset button, a little red button on the bottom that I deliberately triggered. 30 seconds under the sink, 1 finger press, problem solved. But she never bothered to learn about reset buttons, because useless husbands were supposed to handle such mysteries. Wednesday escalated things beautifully. She went to pay bills online and discovered our internet speed had somehow gotten even worse. Pages loaded like they were being delivered by carrier pigeon, and her video calls kept freezing. "This internet is completely unusable," she declared, after spending 20 minutes trying to load her email. "Technology can be so frustrating," I sympathized. "Maybe the router needs one of those technical reset things? Though I wouldn't know how to do that properly. Remember what happened last time I touched the router?" She glared at me. "You mean when you couldn't figure out how to reset it?" "Exactly. Good memory. Wouldn't want to repeat that embarrassment." She ended up calling the internet company, spending an hour and a half on hold, only to be told that their signal showed everything was working perfectly on their end. The problem had to be with our equipment or our usage. "They want to send a technician," she said after hanging up. $60 service charge, plus whatever they find wrong. Ouch, but probably necessary. These technical problems are beyond regular people like me. Thursday was when the real pressure started building. She woke up to find the bedroom ceiling fan had finally given up its wobbly dance and was now making a grinding noise that sounded like it was preparing for takeoff. "That fan is going to kill us in our sleep," she said, staring up at it with genuine concern. "Probably should turn it off then," I suggested helpfully. "And then what? Sleep in a hot room?" I shrugged. Better than being crushed by fan blades. Though I suppose someone competent could fix it safely. Just not me. She turned off the fan and spent the night tossing and turning in the stuffy room. I, meanwhile, slept like a baby. Funny how comfortable you can be when you're not constantly worried about solving everyone else's problems. Friday brought the peace to resistance. She discovered that our home insurance payment had bounced, and we'd received a cancellation notice. Not because we didn't have the money, but because I'd been handling the insurance payments for years through automatic transfer from an account she'd forgotten existed. "Our insurance got canceled," she said, holding the notice like it was radioactive. "That sounds serious," I agreed. "Insurance stuff is pretty important. Why didn't you pay it?" I looked genuinely confused. Why would I handle something that important? You've made it clear that I mess up financial stuff. Remember when you said I didn't understand how bills worked? When did I say that? Last month, when I suggested we switch to a different credit card for better rewards. You said I didn't understand how credit worked and that you'd handle the important financial decisions. She stood there, the notice trembling slightly in her hands. This is different. This is insurance. Exactly. Way too important for someone useless to handle. You should definitely take care of this yourself. What she was discovering was that I'd been quietly managing about 15 different automated payments, account transfers, and financial arrangements that she'd never even known about. The insurance was just the first domino. Saturday morning, she was frantically calling insurance companies, trying to get new coverage immediately. Apparently, driving without insurance is illegal, and having a mortgage without homeowners coverage violates loan agreements. They want 2 months up front since we had a lapse in coverage, she announced after her fourth phone call. That seems expensive, I observed. But I'm sure someone who understands financial stuff can figure it out. She spent the entire weekend dealing with insurance agents, bank transfers, and paperwork that I'd been handling seamlessly for years. Every form required information she had to hunt down. Every conversation revealed another layer of complexity she'd never considered. Sunday night, exhausted and frustrated, she finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. How long are you going to keep this up? I looked up from my tablet with innocent confusion. Keep what up? This act. This useless thing. Act. I set down the tablet and gave her my full attention. I thought we established that I really am useless. You've been very clear about that for years. I'm just finally accepting your assessment. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because I'm confused. For 3 years, you've told me I'm incompetent with household stuff, useless with technical problems, and hopeless with important decisions. Now you seem upset that I'm agreeing with you. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Because what could she say? That she'd been wrong? That she'd been cruel? That maybe, just maybe, the man she'd been calling useless had actually been holding their entire life together? The look on her face told me she was starting to understand the game. But understanding the rules and being able to play by them are two very different things. And we were just getting to the interesting part. Week 3 was when reality decided to teach some expensive lessons. She'd managed to get new insurance, but the washing machine repair estimate came back at $400. Apparently, when you ignore a simple imbalance problem, other parts start wearing out faster. $400 to fix a washing machine, she announced, waving the estimate like evidence in a murder trial. Wow, I said, genuinely impressed. That seems like a lot for a machine that just needed the clothes redistributed. She froze. What? Oh, nothing. I mean, what would I know? I'm just thinking out loud. Probably completely wrong. But the damage was done. She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed the phone and called the repair guy back. The clothes just needed to be redistributed, I heard her say. Is that really a $400 problem? The pause on her end told me everything. The repair guy was explaining that the initial problem was simple, but since she'd continued running unbalanced loads, the motor mounts had loosened and the drum had shifted. She hung up looking pale. Tuesday brought the plumber for the garbage disposal. I watched from the kitchen doorway as he reached under the sink, pressed something, and suddenly the disposal roared back to life. Reset button, he explained cheerfully. Happens all the time. $50 service call though. After he left, she stood staring at the disposal like it had personally betrayed her. Reset button, she muttered. Yeah, funny how those work, I said casually. Almost like someone designed them to be easy fixes for common problems. Did you know about the reset button? I pretended to think about it. Maybe? Hard to remember. I try not to think too much about stuff I'm bad at. The internet technician came Wednesday and spent 20 minutes explaining to her how router settings worked, why bandwidth limitations would cause slowdowns, and how to check these things herself in the future. Your router was configured to limit bandwidth during peak hours, he explained. Easy enough to change, but there's still a service charge. Another $60. Another lesson in the true cost of not knowing how your own house works. But Thursday was my masterpiece. She came home to find water dripping from the bathroom ceiling into the hallway. Not a major leak, just enough to be alarming and require immediate attention. There's water coming through the ceiling, she announced, like I might not have noticed the small puddle forming on the hardwood floor. I examined the situation with appropriate concern. That doesn't look good. Probably need a plumber. Maybe a contractor too, if there's structural damage. Can't you just look upstairs and see where it's coming from? And then what? Even if I found the source, I'd probably make it worse trying to fix it. Water damage can get really expensive really fast. She spent 2 hours calling emergency plumbers. The first one wanted $300 just to come out after hours. The second one could come Friday morning for $200. The third one suggested she turn off the water to the upstairs bathroom and wait until Monday to save money. Turn off the water, she repeated. How do I do that? I shrugged helpfully. No idea. That sounds like advanced plumbing knowledge. She ended up calling her brother, who walked her through finding the shutoff valve over the phone. Then she spent the night listening to intermittent dripping into a bucket sheet placed on the floor. Friday morning, the plumber arrived and went straight upstairs. 5 minutes later, he was back down. Toilet supply line was loose, he announced. Happens when the house settles. Quick turn with a wrench. He handed her a bill for $200. 10-minute fix, but that's the minimum charge for a service call. She paid him and stood in the hallway for a long time after he left, just staring at the wet spot on the ceiling. Loose toilet supply line, she said quietly. Makes sense, I agreed. Those things probably need regular attention from someone who knows what they're doing. How would someone know if they needed attention? Oh, I don't know. Maybe someone who'd learned basic home maintenance over the years. But that would require admitting you don't know everything, which some people find difficult. The weekend was when the math really started hitting home. She sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of receipts, adding up the cost of her educational week. $860, she announced. For 1 week? That does seem expensive. $860 for problems that apparently had simple solutions. I nodded sympathetically. That's the thing about not knowing how to do stuff yourself. Other people charge for their knowledge. She looked up from her calculator. You knew how to fix all of this, didn't you? Maybe some of it. Hard to say. I try not to think about things I'm supposedly bad at. Stop saying supposedly. You're right. Not supposedly. Actually, you've been very clear about my limitations. She set down the calculator and looked at me directly. I need you to help me understand something. I'll try, but no promises. You know how I am with explanations. How long have you been handling all of these things without me knowing? I considered the question carefully. Well, that depends on what you mean by handling. I mean, if I'm useless at this stuff, then I obviously wasn't really handling anything, right? She stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the yard I'd been maintaining for 12 years without her ever mentioning it. This isn't sustainable, she said quietly. What isn't? This. Paying hundreds of dollars every week for things that apparently don't need to cost hundreds of dollars. Sounds like you need to learn how to do more things yourself, I suggested. Or find someone reliable to handle them for you. She turned around slowly. Someone reliable. Exactly. Someone competent. Someone who knows what they're doing. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, and I could see her standing on the edge of understanding. But understanding and admitting are different things entirely, and I wasn't quite done teaching yet. Monday morning brought desperation wearing a bathrobe and yesterday's makeup. She found me in the kitchen, reading the paper and drinking coffee I'd made for myself. We need to talk, she said, her voice carrying none of its usual edge. Sure, I replied, not looking up from the sports section. What's on your mind? She sat across from me, fidgeting with her wedding ring. I think I may have been wrong about some things. Wrong about what specifically? About you. About what you do around here. The words came out slowly, like they physically hurt to say. I folded the paper and gave her my attention. I'm not sure I follow. The repairs, the bills, the maintenance. You've been handling all of it, haven't you? Have I? Because I remember you being pretty clear that I'm useless with that kind of stuff. Her face crumpled slightly. Please stop throwing my words back at me. I'm not throwing anything. I'm just confused about what you want from someone you consider incompetent. She took a shaky breath. I want my husband back. Your husband? The useless one. You're not useless. The words exploded out of her, sharp and desperate. You're not useless, okay? I was wrong. I was cruel. I was stupid. Is that what you want to hear? I set down my coffee cup carefully. What I want to hear is why you think 3 weeks of expensive lessons suddenly changes 3 years of daily humiliation. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Because I didn't realize. Didn't realize what? That actions have consequences? That the person you mock might eventually stop caring about your opinion? I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. My voice stayed calm, but the words hit hard. You meant every word. Every joke to your friends about how hopeless I am. Every eye roll when I try to help. Every time you corrected me in front of other people. Tears started forming in her eyes. I can change. Can you? Because this isn't about learning to fix a garbage disposal. This is about respect. And respect isn't something you can just decide to feel after it becomes expensive not to feel it. She reached across the table toward my hand, but I pulled it back. Please, she whispered. I'll do better. I'll appreciate what you do. I'll stop criticizing everything. You'll stop because you got caught, not because you realized you were wrong. That's not fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Is it fair to spend 12 years building a life with someone who thinks so little of you that they use you as entertainment for dinner guests? The tears were flowing freely now. I never meant to hurt you like that. But you did hurt me. Every single day. And the worst part wasn't the words. It was watching you believe them. She buried her face in her hands. What do you want me to do? I want you to understand something important. I don't need you to appreciate what I do. I don't need you to respect my abilities. I don't need you to stop calling me useless. She looked up, confused and hopeful. Because, I continued, I finally realized something these past 3 weeks. The only person whose opinion of me actually matters is me. And I know exactly what I'm capable of. So what does that mean? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the yard, the house, the life I'd been maintaining while being told I was inadequate. It means you have a choice to make. You can keep treating me like I'm incompetent, and I'll keep being exactly as useless as you say I am. Every broken appliance, every bill, every maintenance issue will be your problem to solve and your money to spend. I turned back to face her, where you can start treating me like a partner instead of a servant you're allowed to mock. Someone whose contributions actually matter. Someone whose knowledge has value. I choose the second one, she said quickly. Do you? Because this isn't about words anymore. This is about fundamental respect. And I'm not going back to being your convenient punching bag just because it got expensive to replace me. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do I have to do to prove it? Nothing. You don't have to prove anything to me. You have to prove it to yourself. You have to figure out if you actually respect the man you married, or if you just need his services. The silence stretched between us while she processed this. And if I can't prove it? I shrugged. Then you'll learn to be as independent as you've always claimed you wanted to be. You'll handle everything yourself, pay for everything yourself, and take full responsibility for the consequences of your choices. And you'll just watch me struggle? No, I said, heading toward the door. I'll be living my life, being useful to people who actually value what I bring to the table. I paused at the doorway. The interesting thing about being called useless for years is that it teaches you something important. You don't need approval from people who don't appreciate you. You just need to find people who do. She called my name as I walked away, but I didn't turn around. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone sit with the weight of their own choices. And she had a lot of weight to carry. 3 months later, our house ran like clockwork again. But this time, things were different. She never called me useless anymore. Not because I'd forbidden it, but because she'd learned what useless actually looked like. She'd lived it, paid for it, and understood the difference between having someone who handles things quietly and having no one at all. The change wasn't immediate. For the first few weeks after our conversation, she tried to overcompensate, thanking me excessively for every small task, praising basic repairs like I performed miracles. It felt hollow because it was hollow, but gradually, something shifted. She started asking questions instead of making assumptions. When the dishwasher made an odd noise, instead of complaining about broken appliances, she asked if I thought it needed attention. When bills arrived, she acknowledged that I handled them efficiently rather than acting like they magically disappeared. The real test came 2 months in. We were having dinner with her sister and brother-in-law when the conversation turned to home repairs. Her sister was complaining about a plumber who'd charged them $600 for what seemed like a simple fix. I watched my wife's face, waiting for the familiar pattern. The joke about my incompetence. The story about how she had to handle everything herself. The casual dismissal of my contributions. Instead, she said something that surprised everyone at the table, including me. That's exactly why I'm grateful my husband knows how to handle those things. I had no idea how expensive basic repairs could be until I tried dealing with them myself. Her sister looked confused. Since when do you praise him for handyman stuff? My wife glanced at me, then back at her sister. Since I learned the difference between having someone competent and having no one at all. That night, after her family left, she found me in the garage organizing tools. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on us when you had every right to. I set down the wrench I was holding and looked at her. I didn't do this to save our marriage. I did it to save myself. I know. That's what makes it matter. She leaned against the workbench, watching me work. Can I ask you something? Sure. How long were you planning to keep it up? The useless act. I smiled. As long as it took for you to understand that respect isn't something you can demand, it's something you earn by giving it. And if I never learned, then you would have learned to be truly independent. And I would have learned that some people can't be taught to value what they have. She was quiet for a moment. I almost lost you, didn't I? You lost a version of me that accepted being disrespected. Whether you lost me entirely was up to you. 6 months later, we hosted a dinner party. Same dining room, different energy. When her father mentioned a project he was struggling with, she didn't dismiss my knowledge or make jokes about my abilities. Instead, she said, "You should ask him about that. He's really good with those kinds of problems." Such a simple sentence, but it represented years of rebuilding. Not just rebuilding our relationship, but rebuilding her understanding of what partnership actually means. The funny thing about teaching someone your worth is that the lesson changes both of you. She learned to value competence instead of taking it for granted. And I learned that my worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. These days, when something breaks around the house, she doesn't assume I'll fix it. She asks if I can help, and she genuinely appreciates when I do. When I handle bills or maintenance, she acknowledges the time and knowledge involved instead of acting like it happens by magic. Most importantly, she stopped using our private life as material for public entertainment. No more jokes about my incompetence at dinner parties. No more eye rolls when I offer solutions. No more treating me like a servant who should be grateful for criticism. Because here's what I finally understood. A man who knows his worth doesn't need to prove it to people who refuse to see it. He just needs to stop accepting less than he deserves. And sometimes, the most powerful way to show someone what they're losing is to let them lose it. She learned that calling someone useless doesn't make them useless. It just makes you someone who can't recognize competence when it's taking care of you every single day. Now when people ask her about home repairs or maintenance, she doesn't joke about having an incompetent husband. She talks about having a capable partner. The difference isn't just in the words. It's in the respect behind them. And that respect? It's something I never had to beg for. I just had to stop accepting anything less. Because real men don't ask for their space. They create it. And they never let anyone make them feel useless for being useful. That's a lesson that changed everything.